Welcome to the Surrogacy Warrior Podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of surrogacy, offering insights, sharing stories, and providing advice. Our mission is to illuminate every corner of surrogacy, from the emotional roller coasters and legal battles to the triumphant moments of birth and beyond. Surrogacy Warrior is more than just a podcast. It's a community for anyone touched by or interested in the transformative power of surrogacy. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Now here's the host of Surrogacy Warrior, Kimberly Surratt.
Welcome, everyone, to Surrogacy Warrior, the podcast where we navigate the incredible journey of surrogacy and everything assisted reproduction. I'm Kim Surratt, your host and passionate advocate for creating families through these remarkable paths. Today, this is exciting. I'm going to introduce you to John Buzzanca. If you work in surrogacy, especially if you're an attorney, there's a good chance you've quoted Buzzanca v. Buzzanca. Am I pronouncing that right, John?
That's
Buzzanca,
fine. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. It shows up in all of our contracts, all of our briefs, all of our continuing education classes, and the courtroom, anytime you're talking about intent-based parentage. Not just with California. I mean, it's a California case, but we see it across the country because a lot of states don't have any cases that are relevant to that topic. And so behind that case citation that we're also familiar with is a real person, and it's John. And John's with us today. And John, you wrote drafted. God, that was a lawyer way of saying things, isn't it? Drafted a book.
Yes. Yeah, it was a draft.
It was very much an attorney way of saying it. You wrote a book called The Smuggler's Daughter, and it's an autobiography. And it's not just about this legal holding in this case, the surrogacy case, but your history with drug smuggling and your criminal background, your criminal history, and your personal story. I appreciate you being here today, John, very much.
I'm glad to be here.
And I read your book, and I recommend that for all surrogacy professionals. I think you should read it because I think it's a good reminder for us as surrogacy professionals that there's a greater story behind cases and all of the family building that we're doing, and there's a deeper dive to be done. Okay, John, so let's set the stage. Let's talk about, for those that don't know Buzzanca v. Buzzanca, basically, and there's so much more behind what I'm about to say, but I'm going to give the real summary, just real quick. There was a child born through a surrogacy contract. You signed a contract for that baby to be born through surrogacy. There's extenuating circumstances around you signing that contract or what your intent or understanding was. But you then rejected the concept that you were a father based on those facts and circumstances. And you explain that in greater detail in your book, obviously. But this went up to the California Supreme Court. The California Supreme Court said you are a father based on the facts that they heard. And so now we come to you. And before we go anywhere near the surrogacy or the litigation part of it, I was saying your book talks about your life leading up to that point and how complicated it was. Without getting into too many details, because I want everybody to read your book, you were heavily involved in drug smuggling before the surrogacy, before this baby was born.
Yes, I was heavily involved. Is be
one
a
way
fair
to put
statement,
it, right?
Yeah. For the better part of 15 years, starting in 75, I was either involved in dealing, and that eventually led to smuggling. And as it ends, like every one of those stories does, an arrest, and I was still involved. I was heavily involved in that when this surrogacy journey started in 1990. The journey started with my former wife, who has passed away. But so I'm not I'm telling just how it was because she's not here to tell you. And she had inherited money from her grandparents, and that's when started. She started the push to start a family. That was 1990. I was arrested in 91, convicted in 92, and the contract in question here was signed in late 94, and I was still fulfilling obligations to the Department of Justice. Um, but she was obsessed with this family. We didn't have. I lost everything when I was arrested. I had some businesses, legal businesses, everything. I was losing my house, and it was just a really bad time emotionally and financially. Um, and that's when this all started. When I was in that position, and she was in that position, but she was the one pushing this. If it was but for my actions, this never would have happened because I never reached out to any surrogacy agent. I never reached out to any doctors. I never paid anything. I didn't have any money. I didn't. Yeah, this was all set up by my former wife,
Right.
and I did try to stop the process. I just didn't succeed at it.
Right. So, I mean, for us, what's important is that those who do intend to enter these contracts are held to the fire and forced to be parents. Like, we don't want people bringing children in the world and then saying, "Oh, never mind, I changed my mind." Buyer's remorse, right?
Understood.
Yeah. But what's key in listening to your story, and a lesson to be learned for surrogacy professionals, is just no one looked at the background story behind you and your wife and your circumstances at that time at all. I mean, they didn't look at, I mean, your conviction alone was you were in the middle of it. You weren't even free from, I mean, you easily could have violated probation, right, at that time and gone back
Oh yeah,
to jail.
I had a choice. I did. Yeah, it was either go back to that life, or I was fortunate enough to get a job in a law firm, and I was really excited about it because I felt there was really a career there, and it was very new to me. I mean, just being around normal people. I mean, that sounds like a small thing, but it wasn't.
No.
Hardworking people, professionals, and I liked it because it was so different from what I was used to, and that's really how I was brought up. So, in a normal family environment. So the other life that I led, I had just strayed and made some bad choices, but that it is what it was. So, uh,
Well,
yeah,
you state in your book, I want to make this part clear just because I know you make it clear in your book that you're not anti-surrogacy, but you do
not
feel,
at all.
but poor, very poor, and you're in the process with what happened to you and this journey that the contract that you signed.
Yes, I am in no way anti-surrogacy. I know people that have gone through surrogacy, and if there's a loving couple that they're bringing this child into, I think it's a wonderful way to start a family, and I think it for the gay community and the same-sex relationships, I think it's wonderful for them. But for straight couples, I am not real fond of the going through surrogacy for donor egg, donor sperm, and it's probably, of course, it's because of my experience. I'm thinking there's a reason they're doing that there, and I'm sure there's some good, really valid, explainable reasons. But I'm thinking of my case, and I'm thinking the only reason that happened for us is because my former wife couldn't stay pregnant, and we couldn't adopt because of adoption would have ran a background check, and that would have disqualified us. So she basically went out and bought sperm and bought donor sperm, donor egg, and then had a, a surrogate carry the baby to term. So I'm not real fond of that. And again, I don't know. There's probably circumstances where that makes sense, but to me, that doesn't really set well.
Well, it probably doesn't set well just because of how it all ultimately went down for you. But
100%.
we do have couples who both have infertility physically,
Yes.
but they're a healthy, happy family, or want to be a healthy, happy family with
Yes.
children. And you mentioned that you think a background check would have helped a lot in your case because they would have known about your criminal background. Now, your ex-wife didn't have a criminal background. She was never arrested or a part of it, right?
No.
Yeah, but
yeah.
but she had some serious addiction issues.
She was battling alcoholism from the time we met.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was bad, and she would was struggling with it. So I didn't understand. It was hard for me to understand why she was so obsessed with starting a family, because really, if she wanted to try and work things out, it would have been. I was very clear that I didn't need children to complete my life at that time. I'm not. I love kids. I do. I'm fortunate now. I have friends, and now I'm more in the grandfather
Right.
age group. So I get to enjoy my friends' kids, and I love it. And I think I would have been a good parent. I never saw my former wife as real nurturing. I mean, and there just wasn't the responsibility that I saw there. So I wasn't quite understanding why she was so obsessed with this. And I mean obsessed right after she got an inheritance. So I don't know.
Well, I think that's fascinating too, actually, from my perspective. And you go on about this in the book and give lots of examples of what she went through and how hard she worked at it, and how much she fixated on it. And it is an experience that we live as professionals in the reproductive world, that weird little thing in your brain that says I want to be a parent, when it turns on, it's on, and it it is hell bent to get there. And
Yeah.
it's a very fascinating primal need that people have once they have it. And so we find ourselves often trying to slow people down because they're making mistakes. They're willing to match with a surrogate that's not a good surrogate, that go with a clinic that's not a good clinic. They work with agencies that are violating all the rules that we say are the ethical rules they should be following, because the price tag's smaller, or they're able to afford it, or they finally have an opportunity, and they just turn off everything
Yes.
around them, and that's all they can see. And that's kind of
Yes.
what you explain with her. That's all she could see.
Yeah. And I just think you should if you're going to bring a child into this world, no matter how you bring it into this world, you should be able to take care of it, give it a loving home, and have the proper setting to raise the child. And we had none of that.
Yeah. It's a massive debate in our industry, because there is a fine line behind telling people who can and cannot be a parent. And there's the obvious ones: pedophiles, convicted pedophiles, probably not, right? And or the conservative end of our country who says gay couples should not be parents, right? And so there's always that fine line between there's other lines we look at all the time too, which is, at what age can we tell somebody they can't be a parent any longer and they can't use reproductive technology or surrogacy? I don't know the magic line. The bioethics part of it, and the doctors are constantly struggling with at what age, because at what point are they not going to be around for the whole minority of their children because they have reached a certain age. And so it's a constant debate. And I'm a proponent, I'll put it straight out there, and you put this in your book, that a background check should have been done on you as an intended parent. And I agree. I'm a strong proponent of it. I do think it can be abused. Um, and I'll give you an example, and you can tell me what you think, because it's interesting that you told me. I love being, being around my friends' kids now as a grandparent, figure, that type of stuff. And some of it's timing, yes, you were convicted. You turned your life around. I mean, according to the book, you really turned it around.
It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy. Yeah. But say in different circumstances, John, and this is all hypothetical, and so you're playing a game with me, but you had your smuggling days, you turned your life around, you did everything you were supposed to do, you stayed out of jail, you got clean. But what if you had had a healthy wife at that time, that you had a healthy relationship, a wife that really was suited for parenting at that time? And they did a background check on you and said, but because you had that smuggling background, you can't be a parent. But you wanted to. What if you wanted to? I know in your circumstance, you signed against your will, just trying to appease her. But
If I and this is a good point. If I was the uh, person that was engineering the opportunity to be a parent, I would have stopped at nothing. I would have gone and seen what I could do to with the whatever attorneys I needed to talk to so I could become a parent to prove that I had turned my life around. It wasn't I was against having a family. It's just I accepted the fact that I'd made choices in my life, and I that was one of the things that my choices affected. I wasn't that a family wasn't in my cards, and it wasn't just for me. It wouldn't have been fair to a child. It wouldn't have been. My lifestyle was not conducive to a normal family.
yeah,
So that's probably why my former wife and I got to the point we did where we were together, because I wasn't held accountable to her and she wasn't held accountable to me, and it became a marriage of really convenience and not much love, and it was drifting apart. And while I was had that crossroads where I had to either start doing the right thing and get back on the straight and narrow, she she didn't understand or want to understand, or like you said, maybe it was just that part of her life, and it was just button heads. It was just button heads because I felt I was dealing with reality and common sense, and there was no, she couldn't see any of that.
yeah.
She didn't agree with it.
It's hard because I look at how you turned your life around. I mean, obviously, you appear right now to me to be an upstanding citizen. I don't really know, John.
No, no, yeah,
But according to your book, you did. And, at some point, while I want a background check, there's two purposes to the background check. One, to say, can you or can't you be a parent? Well, that's a very difficult conversation, because if you've turned your life around, and despite having that conviction, should you be prevented from being a parent? Probably not. If you're a child pedophile, hands off, right?
right.
But then there's the purpose of doing a background check to see how suited you are to work with a third party and through a journey and comply and do everything you're supposed to do and take the child home at the end, all that, because that surrogate has to rely on the fact that you're well suited, right? That you're going to pay her when you're supposed to pay her. You're going to show up, all those kinds of things, because the surrogate doesn't want to be stuck with a baby at the end. And that probably fits more in the category of you, where it's the suitability of your family functioning wasn't decent.
And no, it just wasn't looked into. Like you said, I could have been a convicted pedophile, and no one would have ever said anything, ever, because they didn't look
Yeah,
at all.
yeah,
And that basically that we were our contracts were filled with deception and lies, and that was orchestrated by my former wife. I mean, we should have been charged with fraudulence in the inducement. I mean, because it was lies on the questionnaires.
right.
There was nothing right about it.
Did you fill out any of those questionnaires? I know you signed
No,
a contract, but she did all of that, right?
she feels about. I said, what am I supposed to put here where it says? Uh, she goes, just let me fill these out.
Yeah. And did you ever talk to the agency till later in the process, or?
One time I met and I barely said two. I mean, if I was the agency, I think I met them at the beginning when she was just going to go through IVF treatment. And if I was the agency, I would have said something's not right here. I didn't say two words. I met the surrogate one time. I met the doctors, who, by the way, are
Well, there's a whole story behind the doctors
yeah.
use
Got to read the
case.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you gotta read
yeah,
the book. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, they're still fugitives. But there was so much that wasn't that. And again, I'm not trying to blame anyone, but it's a fact. There's a whole lot of circumstances that my attorney could have brought up and made, and he was not a good advocate for me at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and who knows how that case would have turned out with different advocacy. I mean,
and
there's a lot of cases in history as a lawyer you look at and go, I would never have argued it that way, you know?
yeah, when the trial court ruled that I wasn't my former wife and I weren't the parents, that was a death sentence for me, and my attorney thought it was a victory. So the trial court rules that the child has no parents.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just like feeding me to the wolves. That was the worst thing that could have happened, and my attorney was elated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the tide seriously changed shortly thereafter that hearing, and he used the same argument. And I mean, I wasn't a lawyer, and I was scared, and I didn't. My whole life was flashing before me, and uh, he held on to that same argument because he thought he got the favorable ruling at the trial court, and I was being torn apart. And he thought, well, this is the law now, the Uniform Parentage Act. By definition, you're not a parent. Well, it became seriously apparent to me that they were going to fix that Uniform Parentage Act, and they did.
Right. Right. Well, it's for lessons learned, and reading
Yes,
your book and listening to you. I mean, I don't want to say that the industry's that we're perfect compared to what it was in the 90s when this was happening. We're not. We still have
yes,
a lot of
it's
flaws.
better.
It's better. It's a lot better. And a lot of agencies take a lot more time interviewing people and getting to know them and researching their social history and that type of stuff. But unfortunately, I still feel like a majority of that happens on the surrogates because we're so worried about surrogates disappearing while pregnant with somebody's baby, or doing something bad during the pregnancy that harms the
Right.
child, that so much of the focus is on that and still not enough focus on looking at the intended parents. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the big lessons I hear from you too is that when you have only one spouse showing up a majority of the time, and
Yeah.
you need to be really thinking to yourself, what's going on here? Right?
That's a red flag.
Yeah. It's a big red flag because they didn't
Yeah.
talk to you. They didn't involve you in the process, and they would have learned really, early on that you were not a participant and didn't want to participate.
They didn't see that because I refused to go to these meetings that she had. And I mean, I was starting a new job and I wasn't making very much money. And I wasn't gonna, yeah, the bottom line is I wasn't gonna take time off work and jeopardize, make a bad impression on my employer at the time by asking for time off to go meet surrogacy. Yes, yeah, that was a red flag. Someone should have noticed it.
Yeah,
But back then, yeah,
they were just barreling forward.
yeah, especially after the trial court ruled that we weren't the parents. I mean, the first thing they did was appoint counsel for the minor, which they should have, and uh, he was an appellate specialist, and he did what he was supposed to do. He was in a pretty good position from a legal standpoint. It would have been hard for him to not prevail in his situation because he was advocating for the minor.
Right.
So
What's interesting is California has, shifted. So I'm licensed both in Nevada and California, and we do have to do a background check when we submit for parentage. Well, by the time we submit for parentage, there is a pregnancy. The surrogate is pregnant. And it's a little late to go figuring out now whether somebody should or shouldn't be a parent based on a background check. And
that doesn't make sense.
The timing is still off. It still doesn't make any sense. And we need to shift it so that it's always at the beginning. And I push really hard for background checks at the beginning now. And boy, do I get a lot of pushback. But it's important to know ahead of time who you're working with, because at that point, it'd been no different from your situation, which is, all right, child's here. Now let's look at what everybody's feasibility is. That's too late. That's not child-centric, and that is not doing well for the child.
And I don't know if the outcome would have been, if this would have changed the outcome at all. I don't think it might not have, just because of the temperature at the time of the surrogacy industry. But when I signed the contract, the surrogate was already pregnant. And to me, since maybe this is a layman's viewpoint, but to me, the parentage was based on this contract. And to me, I signed that contract definitely under coercion and duress. And the contract was never litigated. And there were other options that they had, and I just feel like I felt like, since it was such a publicized case in the media, that my attorney at the time just wanted to keep the thing going, because when the UCI scandal broke, the bio mom and bio dad both heard about it, and that due to the unethical things that were happening, they both volunteered to adopt the child before even the trial happened, in the trial level. So they had options, and my attorney, he just wanted to argue the uniform parentage.
I want to go back to that, because you brought up another. We're taking a different angle on this. Obviously, everybody should read your book, but I'm going right for the things that are from an advocacy perspective of a surrogacy attorney who believes in surrogacy, believes it's a great option for a lot of people. We have had lots of movement towards nearly all statutes say that a surrogacy contract has to be signed before fertility treatment, before the embryo transfer.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean before medical screening. We still want to make sure a surrogate's medically capable of being a surrogate before we go signing a contract with her.
Right.
But that is the absolute industry standard at this point, and it is statutory that the contract has to be signed before. And one of the reasons and the purpose behind it is going back to intent-based parentage, that the reason surrogacy works, the reason it's legal ever to start with, is because everybody intended from the onset
Right.
that it was a surrogacy, that she was not a
Yes.
parent, that you were a parent. You don't
Correct.
sign after somebody's pregnant because there's duress. She's already pregnant. There's, the pressure and the coercion at that point on everybody is too significant. And it meant that a pregnancy occurred without intent ahead of time. And that's not surrogacy. That's not the core of what surrogacy is.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was but to be honest, I'm actually kind of proud of myself. I didn't want to go through what I went through, but I did it, and I paid all my child support that I was ordered to pay, and that's a lot more than a lot of biological fathers do. And again, I'm not. It wasn't just because it wasn't my DNA. I've since then I've dated women with uh, children, and I have no problem with that. They don't have to be mine, and I accepted them, you know, as of the family. So it wasn't that. It was all the surrounding facts, and I spent a lot of years being bitter and angry, and it was just a waste of time. As soon as I made that last child support payment, I was relieved of all the anger, the bitterness. It all went away. I was glad I was done. And yeah, I can look myself in the mirror.
Right. So what motivated you to write the book?
I well, there are a few reasons. I felt like I wrote it for maybe for potential parents that maybe they should read this, and if there's any similar feelings,
Right.
they should maybe think about it. Wrote it for the attorneys that maybe they should look for any kind of things that took place in my case. Uh, Maybe they're having some similar issues and they hadn't thought about before. And I wrote it to clear my name. Because I was really vilified. I don't. You probably all you probably read was the court proceedings and everything. But there were I was in it. We were interviewed on 48 hours, and it's none of my past by on either side. My attorneys, and he knew a little bit about my past, but he didn't seem concerned with that. But I was never questioned in depositions or anything about any of that. Nothing, because that would have made the court not look favorably upon this. They might have changed their mind if my past had come up and if my wife's history had come up. I don't know that it would have because they based it on the contract, but if the if they based it on the contract, how could they not? How could they argue that the contract shouldn't have been litigated? So it was like
Yeah.
it was like when I guess they were being pressured to find an answer
Right.
in public opinion. And when at the appellate hearing, I didn't go. I heard the results. My attorney went up there, used the same argument, even said to the court appellate justices that I yeah, what probably wasn't the smartest thing my client did by signing that. And there were something like 12 to 14 lawyers there on behalf of the child, including the California State Attorney General. So they were lined up. And yeah, that's another reason why I wrote this.
Okay. And so for our listeners, what else can they get from your book? I mean, we've really glossed over all your long history that's in the book, but there's a lot there.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think it's a cautionary tale, and maybe it'll make maybe it'll make people think a little bit before they start before they there's always a little bit more behind the in the background than there is that you read about. And I was it was just brutal what I was the things people were saying in the paper. And I mean, I'd spent up to that point, I'd spent my adult life trying to stay under the radar. I didn't want to be in the public eye at all.
Right.
And it was horrifying. It really was.
So you made one comment, and this has nothing to do with the surrogacy end of things, just the drugs and the smuggling and the lifestyle. You made a comment about, and it ended in an arrest like all those stories do. And I kind of felt that way when I was reading your book, where I was like, oh, and they're caught. Oh, and they're caught.
Yeah.
And what do you say to kids that are getting enticed into that world? I mean, you have completely changed your story. And now as an adult, looking back, how do kids stay away from that? How do you not get duped into it?
I don't know if there is an answer to that, because
Yeah.
there's the money's attractive, the lifestyle's attractive, especially when you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s, and you're making money. You can't get a job where you're making that kind of money, and it's awful tempting. And I'm sure the game has changed now, but you'd have to be the
Don't change,
exception.
I don't think.
It's
Even if the game changes, the temptation
the endings don't. The endings don't.
don't.
Yeah, the endings don't. And yeah, I thought I could outsmart them too. I thought I could outsmart the authorities, but you know, the longer you do it, the more likely are you going to make a mistake, even if it's a small mistake. And criminals aren't that smart. They aren't. They're not nearly as
They
smart as they
are.
think they are.
Yeah.
No.
I think the bigger problem for criminals is just when you got 100 law enforcement working against the one criminal, then it's hard to outsmart 100 people, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they're all looking at you. And
especially with the technology today. I mean, yeah, we were cowboys. I mean, they didn't. Yeah, that wouldn't fly today.
all right, my friend. So let's encourage people to buy your book and read it. The title of the book is The Smuggler's Daughter: Drugs, Crime, and the Surrogacy Industry. Where can people get a copy of the book?
They can get it on Amazon. They can get it through Barnes and Noble online, and there will be some links. There's going to be a website that's going to be up within the next couple weeks. It's smugglersdaughter.com, and there will be links on there that you can purchase it. So, yeah, I think this is an interesting, entertaining story. Definitely unique. It's true. So I'm hoping someone might be interested in me. You don't find many good true stories anymore, and where there's people alive anyway. And maybe this might make it to a series or a film. I'm hoping.
There you go. And if there's anything you want to say to professionals and individuals in the surrogacy world right now that have never heard your side of the story, what would you say to them?
Don't quit. Just make it better. Just keep after it. Just keep after and make it better. There's loopholes that people get through, but make your game tighter. I think they could too.
I love that, John, because that's a big part of why this is Surrogacy Warrior and the advocacy end of it, to be better, to be more ethical. We all have a lot of room to go with that. And everybody thinks they're just get busy and they move and they move and they go. And I was talking about that, like tunnel vision, and they got to slow down and do better.
Yeah, if there's nothing to hide, people should be more than willing to give any background information they need. If there's nothing there, and that's who these children should be going to, people with nothing to hide. Yeah, I just think tighten it up, because I read about these. I've read about some of the pitfalls that have happened in the surrogacy industry, where they're having these agencies and they open escrow accounts, and then people are stealing. And to me, that doesn't seem like it should be that hard to fix, but I don't know. So, I mean,
it shouldn't be. And part of it is the education and getting the information out there. People need to hear stories like yours. They need to learn from it. And we have a lot of problems within the escrow end of the surrogacy world right now. And we tell people all the time, an agency shouldn't hold your money. There's no reason an agency should be holding your money. And when there's two lawyers, a lawyer for the surrogate and a lawyer for the intended parents, and one of them is holding all the money, that's not neutral either. So, it's a simple fix. Good
And you got,
companies that are bonded and screened, and look for neutrality. That's important.
and make sure, and I think also don't overlook the ethical background of the medical professionals, because obviously, they're not all on the up and up. And I think it's there. I think there's plenty of room to tighten up the process.
There is, and we can do it in order to allow people to pursue their dreams and become parents.
It's supposed to be a happy.
Good thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
And yours is a cautionary tale of it's not always that way, and we need to look behind the scenes and look at more information. So,
yeah.
John, thank you. I appreciate you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We hope you found that this discussion was enlightening and empowering, pushes you to do better. We all can do better, we promise. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate us, leave a review, send us suggestions for additional shows. You can get more information on me at lawyersforfamilies.com or surrogacy-warrior.com. For more information and resources. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Together we are warriors. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for your dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You've been tuning into the Surrogacy Warrior podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, 𝐓𝐿awyersforfamilies.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.